Those ashy feet.
Oh.
Those ashy feet.
Gentlemen, we are live.
Yes, that's right. I forgot.
We're live, and
What's up, everybody? Hey, y'all, you like your feet.
Shit.
What the fuck, man?
Out of here.
Put lotion on.
What's up,
so violated.
Put lotion on.
How y'all doing, man? We are back again. I am your boy, Big Ruck.
Brother Los.
Ashy Feet.
Ashy feet.
By Jonathan. Number 9.
Like, who's that? What you got on?
Ashy Feet. By Jonathan. Number 9.
We got Bobby Blackhand on the cams.
I got a new name, Bobby Blackhand.
Blackhand.
Man, so how y'all doing out there in YouTube land once again?
Hey, man.
This nigga in YouTube land, he be killing me.
Hey, man. That's what it is, right? That's what it is.
That's the only place they be. Or
man.
TikTok land. Or
Exactly.
They're there all day.
All of that. The social media land. But check it out, man. We're going to do something special today, man.
This nigga name is Toe Jam.
You karate name. You karate name. You karate name is Toe Jam. Yo, just one toe.
Right?
And that hoe better be ashy. Oh, God.
Okay, fuck all y'all.
Oh,
Yes,
man.
sir.
shit.
Yes, sir. Okay, I'll be quiet.
Not for long, not for long. But check it, let me tell everybody what we're going to do today. We're going to do something a little special today, man. We have a very, very, very special guest coming on today. It's a pre-recorded little situation that we have going on, and it's actually attached to the suicide theme that we've been having for the past couple of episodes. So, Brother Ron has a very good friend by the name of Michelle, and she's gonna be telling us her story about being the survivor of a suicide victim, one of her really close friends. Yeah. And it's gonna be about a 50-minute video. So make sure y'all turn the volume up, because since she was so far away, the connection was a little bad. It's clear, it's just kind of low. So just make sure you turn your volume up and make sure you really pay attention. And listen, I would really, really urge everybody out there to share the link. Please share the link, because this is something that needs to be seen and heard. Yes. All right? This is very, very serious and very, very important. You could literally save somebody's life.
Amen.
Just by sending that link out, man.
Amen, bro.
So please make sure y'all do that, and please make sure y'all hit the like button, share. I can't stress it enough. All right. So we're gonna get into that in just a few minutes. So go ahead.
With what he was saying, tune back in after the interview, and we're gonna have more information for you as we go live and finish the show out.
Right. And just to be clear, you don't have to go anywhere, so you don't have to actually tune back in. And when the video is over, it's gonna come right back to us.
Right.
God
So,
willing.
yeah, right. God willing, if everything work out right.
He's willing.
Man, so how everybody feeling, man?
Good, bro.
Good.
Good to see everybody.
Good,
Glad to
man.
be here, of course.
Bet that, man.
I needed a good laugh too.
Yeah, for real.
Mm-hmm.
Especially about when we were before was about to come.
Right.
Yeah.
Man.
And again, we know that this is a serious subject, and it might even be uncomfortable for a lot of people to really talk about and deal with. But that's one of the reasons why we need to talk about it.
Absolutely.
Especially amongst the black community, it's something that we really need to deal with, because the numbers for us are going up.
Yeah.
And so this is the kind of thing that we don't do traditionally. So we need to know how to deal with it, what to look for, and if you happen to find yourself in a situation where you've lost a family member or a loved one to this kind of situation, how do you deal with it? How do you move past it? Because you have to. you actually see increased suicide rates amongst the loved ones once somebody commits suicide. So you can have almost a ripple effect with suicide because one person does it. So you might wind up losing a couple of people in the family or a friend group or something like that. So yeah, it's one of those things you really need to think about.
And don't get it twisted, man, because male suicide rates are higher than females.
Right.
So send it to
Right.
your boys. Please,
Everybody,
your boys, your kids, everybody, man.
Ain't no
Comfortable or
shame.
not.
Ain't no shame in thinking about it, or
Yeah,
even
yeah.
having those thoughts. It's what you do, and we definitely need among men the opportunity to be able to talk about that kind of thing.
Absolutely.
There'll be
Because
information on it too.
sometimes we just too hard to talk about it. We try to keep everything in ourselves, man.
Yeah.
That's a flaw.
Yeah,
That's why it's good to have a circle like this, so we can lean
right.
on each other in the times of need, man. You know what I'm saying? Real shit.
Let's get to this.
So we're about to go ahead and kick off into this video. Once again, the lovely lady her name is Michelle.
From the
and
UK.
She's finna give
All the way
y'all,
from England.
give us all a piece of her heart, man. So y'all please tap in and share that link.
And stay tuned.
Ready whenever you are, B.
All right.
We're on.
So, this is Brother Ron from the Daily Smoke, and the Daily Smoke has the opportunity to interview a very close friend of mine. She's almost like family. She's coming to us live from the United Kingdom, and I asked her to be a part of this interview since we're talking about mental health wellness this week, suicide and survivors of suicide. And she literally jumped at a moment's notice and volunteered to join us on this show. So here we have Miss Michelle coming to us live from the United Kingdom. Michelle, with the Daily Smoke, how you doing today?
I'm okay. I'm doing all right. Thank you.
Good deal, good deal. I know that's like a 6-hour difference, so it's kind of late there. Still early here, but I know it's kind of late there, so I promise you we won't hold you too long.
And thank you for
Yeah,
doing
you're
this.
fine. Well, yeah, it's 10:15 at night on a Saturday night.
I'm sorry interrupting your party in time.
That's why I said thank you for leaving the club to come talk to us.
We do appreciate
Yeah,
it.
yeah, I'm always clubbing. Yeah.
Me too.
Michelle, if you want, we're gonna just go ahead and open the floor to you. We're talking about mental health and awareness this week and everything, in particular suicide and survivors of suicide. So, would you care to share with the audience, your experiences with it, or your people you've known, or maybe even yourself? Take your time and just go and cover as much information as you need. We're in no rush. You have the floor.
Okay. Well, about 5.5 years ago, my best friend, my closest friend, he took his own life. He took his own life up with by hanging himself. And this was after a period of about 12 to 14 months of a projected breakdown. And it was, I suppose you want to talk about me as a survivor, as a friend. It was an absolute shock. I knew he was very unwell. I knew why he was unwell. I knew why he was in the place, because I'd counselled him many times. We spent a lot of time together during that 12 to 14 month period. And when it happened in August, the middle of the summer. It happened on an absolutely beautiful day, beautiful night. It actually happened on the 12th of August, which is particularly significant because it's the night when all the shooting stars happen. So that particular night, I'd gone out with friends to go and look at shooting stars, and that was the night that he chose to take his life. And earlier that year, he spent about probably 2 months in hospital, in a local hospital that's just designed specifically to look after people who've had breakdowns. And I'd seen him after he'd been released from hospital. He looked amazing. He looked suntanned. He put weight back on. He looked relaxed. He wasn't anxious anymore. And I thought, they've helped him. They've brought him round. They've brought him back to his self, to his normal self. And then 2 months later, he'd asked to go back into hospital. And then after a week in hospital, he had taken his own life. So there's lots of other issues there. There's during the inquest into his death, it was found that the hospital had acted negligently. They had not been watching him carefully, and that it was actually really easy for him to sort of get out of their care and get away from them watching him, and do what he did. I personally think that my suspicion is that he planned it that way, that he made the decision to do it. He didn't want to do it. Both his mother and father were living with him in his house, which is only 2 doors up the street from where I live. And I think he made the decision to do it, and that he didn't want to do it in the house where his mum and dad would find him, that he wanted to do it from the hospital, where the professionals were there, and it would be professionals that would find him and the professionals that would deal with him. And the loss, the shock of it, is because everybody, all his friends, all his family, actually thought he'd turned the corner, thought that he was getting better. And understand, and I guess nobody can ever really truly understand what goes on in someone else's head and how they come to the conclusions that they come to. But that's part of what you're left with when you're left by somebody who takes their own life, is that you are constantly thinking, why have they done that? Why have they done that? You don't understand the logical steps of thinking that they've gone through to end up being in that situation where they're just hanging. And it's and you're left with unanswered questions, and that's what you have to live with the rest of your life, is all of those unanswered questions. And the other part of it that's difficult to survive, someone so close actually taking their own life, is I've since come to realise that sort of suicidal ideation and suicidal thoughts, I'm pretty certain most of us never ever talk about it, but I'm absolutely certain that at some point in our lives, every single one of us thinks, I cannot deal with this shit at the moment, and I just want to. They just want to step off the world. I'm convinced that people don't want to die. They don't actually want to kill themselves. They actually just don't want their life to be like it is, but they can't change it. So the only solution is to die. And it's not, they don't want to die, it's the only cure that they have for whatever situation they're in. And I'm pretty certain that the vast majority of us at some point in our lives, because life is so difficult, there is a point where we actually think, I can't deal with this, or I just need to get off. And when someone actually does it, it makes that ideation stops being a fantasy because it becomes real, because you know someone's actually done it. And and you got all of that thinking all of that going on in your head at the same time as thinking, if you have been there, if you had those thoughts, and you talked yourself out of them, you then have a mixture of extra feelings, thinking, why did you not talk yourself out of it? Why did you not just hang on for a little bit longer to wait for that moment and that feeling could pass? And so you have all of the emotions of grief, of anger, bargaining, all of those stages of grief all at once, all at the same time. And so yeah, when I had that phone call on it was a Thursday morning, it was glorious sunshine, it was a hot day. I actually felt angry that it was such a beautiful day. You know, it was like it should be raining. It was yeah. And that was it. That was 2015.
If I can, I wanted to ask a question. When you talk to you guys about anything like that, have you been thinking of doing something like that? But that never came up. So did you ever, at any given time in a group of friends, did you ever talk about it? Or even the thought of, I might kill myself one day. Anything like that? Never, nothing?
No, Michael never realised it, but it was discussed. I mean, the thing about Michael was this. I mean, he was a school teacher, and he'd been a school teacher for over 20 years. So, and he taught religious studies in a secondary school. I don't know what you would call them in America, but so from 11 to 16-year-olds, and so as part of his subject, they would talk about social issues, from relationships to mental health. He would run their cultural days and their mental health days and their well-being days. So I think he was more tuned in and turned on to the issues of mental health, especially for children. The other factor is he was gay, and he was gay. He was, we were born in the 70s. We were the same age, he and I. So we grew up we were teenagers in the 80s when AIDS started, when that became a big thing, and he would have been a teenager. At the same time he realised he's gay, he knows there's this horrific disease that appears to be killing gay people, and the only reason it was killing gay people is because it was a disease of promiscuity, and more than, it wasn't a gay disease, it was a disease of promiscuity. Gay men had the opportunity to be more liberal than straight people did, and so that's why that community was affected more, and it must have been terrifying. I mean, I know my friends at school who were gay and lesbians as well, that it was a terrifying time for those lads. I mean, we never talked about it, of course, because you didn't in the 80s, but that sort of impact was there. And I think I mean, it's not why he killed himself, but it's this whole impact of being part of a community that had laws that legislated their life, and then this disease, and being a teenager at that time, lays a mental foundation of vulnerability in someone's life. And if you're not part of a community that is subjected to laws that regulate your life, or illnesses or physical conditions that seem to predominantly affect you, mainly because of the laws that are regulating your life, then you've got no idea the mental effect that's going to have on you.
Absolutely.
And so when he became a teacher and an adult, he became a teacher at a time when the current Conservative Party had introduced a law banning books and education for teenagers about homosexuality, and it was called Clause 28, and it was probably one of the biggest. It was brand new, and it was the biggest restriction on that community's life, and that's when they really started to push forward. They started campaigning because they needed better healthcare, but they also wanted people to be aware of the restrictions on their life. And I remember him telling me that when he started educating, he was counselling a 13-year-old boy who was trying to slash his own wrists because he realised he was gay. And, so he's a teacher, he's an adult teacher who's realised, who's come to terms and found his own coping strategies, trying to save the life of a 13-year-old child. But if he had said to him, you're gay, you're going to be okay, we'll be happy, you will find love, you're not going to be alone, it's not the end of the world, he would have been sacked from his job, and he would have been, banned from teaching and banned from any contact with children. But for the simple act of just telling a gay child, you're going to be okay. So right from the very beginning of his life, he would have been very aware of ideas around suicide and the impact of prejudice on people's mental health. And I think that was, and I think that's the one thing that, and that also leads into part of, it's like my generation, our generation is the generation that's lived through this cultural revolution of people suddenly being able to live their authentic life. Gay people, my generation of gay people have been able to truly, they're the generation that are free to live their own life. They can get married now, they can adopt kids, they can have kids. Nobody's telling them that they can't live with the people that they fall in love with or have promiscuous relationships with. They are legally allowed to behave as badly or as good as any heterosexual straight person can. And there's a liberation in that. And so part of me thinks, well, that leads into that sort of what, why could you not feel the strength and power of that freedom? But some people don't. Some people are so deeply traumatized by the impact of that prejudice that it means that his whole life, his whole mental health was like an ice over pond, and if you're walking on ice, you're either slip sliding or the ice is cracking, and then you then get the impact of how hard life is with work and debt and relationships and all of that stuff. It then became too much. And it's such a shame because he was an immensely loved person. He was very valued. He was wanted. He wasn't. I think he was alone, but he was surrounded by people who loved him and wanted him. And when his funeral, I would say about 800 people turned up for his funeral.
Wow.
They were children, they were kids, they were ex-pupils. The local football team had a 2-minute silence for him before a match. The outpouring of grief was extraordinary. I mean, he touched so many people's lives and made such a positive impact on so many people's lives that moment of when I think that's what he didn't do anything wrong. He wasn't a wicked person. He wasn't an evil person. He was somebody who loved, almost, maybe he just loved too much. And at the end of the day, what happened, what was the trigger for this sort of long fuse, this 12, 14-month fuse, was heartbreak. His heart was broken and he couldn't get back. And it was really hard because he was surrounded by people who loved him, who were just constantly trying to pull him back. I guess the ice broke, fell through, and we were all there trying to pull him through.
I appreciate that. Thank you that answered a lot. Yeah, that's crazy. That don't make no sense.
I would imagine that's probably the hardest part to deal with, have after the fact, because you did love him and care about him so much, to have that feeling of, okay, is there something else that I could have done or maybe said or something like that? That's got to be part, I would imagine anyway, that's got to be the hardest part to deal with.
I think anybody who is a survivor of suicide is going to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
It's somebody who's been left. Hang on, that was the wrong phrase. If someone's left behind by a suicide, every single one of you saying, "What could I have said something? Could I have done something?" I mean, I'm haunted by the last time I saw him. The last time I spoke to him. In that last moment, I know I let him down because it was the day before he asked to go back into hospital. It was about 10 to 10. In the UK, there's always a drama on the TV that goes from 9 o'clock till 10. And I was engrossed in it. And he came to the door, and I'd normally always leave my door on the latch so he could just walk in whenever he wanted to. And he walked in, and he said, "Let's go for a walk. Need to go for a walk now." And I said, "Oh, it's just the end of this TV program. Let us watch just the end of the TV program, and then I'll come for a walk." And he said, "Okay, all right, I'll see you in 10 minutes." And then he went out, and that was the last time I ever saw him. And his mum came back round, and she said, "Oh, Michael doesn't feel like going for a walk." And I said, "Okay, I'll see him tomorrow night then." And then the following day, he went into hospital, and I never saw him again. And I keep on thinking, if I had to watch the end of this fucking program in that moment that I was watching TV was suddenly more important. And I mean, for the rest of the year, I didn't watch television. I didn't switch the TV on for about a month afterwards, and I barely watched any television because I felt like I don't think I would have been. I'm not arrogant enough to think that I could have guessed what was going to happen,
Right.
or that I could have said anything that would have stopped him.
Right.
I just think that if it was in his head at that moment, did he want to say goodbye? Was this his last moment of saying goodbye? I don't know. But all I know is that I didn't go with him when he asked me to, and and I'll always regret that.
That's hard.
You okay?
Mm-hmm.
You wanna take a break?
Yeah, I don't. I'm not. I'm glad I still cry. I'm not ashamed. I'm not worried about crying about it, because when I think about him, and since you asked me to do this, Ron, I've been thinking about him a lot. So I've been crying a lot, and I'm glad I still cry about it, because that means, I still miss him. I still love him.
Right.
He's still important. I never try and stop myself from crying, because that means that I still feel.
At this point, your sadness is an expression of that love for him. So yeah, I can definitely understand that.
I have a question.
You can hear up.
Yeah, project your voice,
You
brother.
know, listening to when you were saying how, when he asked you to go outside and everything, and you wanted to finish, and apparently in the beginning you really felt that, maybe that if you had have taken that walk with him, that something different may have happened, right? What did you do to kind of cope with that, to get beyond that, to get past that?
I don't know that I did anything. I was in shock. I know I was in shock. And I think I wasn't consciously making any decisions at all. You go through the motions. What motions? I don't know what they were. I mean, everything seems like a blur. I know that I was very fortunate in that my manager at work, and I mean, I'd only been in the job for about 3 months, and I phoned her up and I told her what's happened, and she basically, she authorised leave, which was about approximately 2.5 weeks. So, she said, don't come in. And I mean, it's actually quite remarkable when I think about it. She just basically said, I don't want to see you in here for the next 2 weeks. So,
Like, you're not going to be any good to me right now, so go on, take the time off.
yeah. So, yes, and I can only imagine that she just knew. So I just think, or maybe she'd had the experience herself in her life, that she just got it straight away.
Yeah.
Because that's not a regular policy in employment in this country. You'd have to go to the doctor and get signed off. And she signed me off personally, so I didn't have to worry about work. And I think for about 3 days I didn't get out of bed, didn't get dressed. people came round to see me for it. And that was the other thing that was really interesting. It was quite surprising that the people who did come and see me weren't the people who I would have expected to. And the people who were friends, I did have friends come round, friends that understood. But another friend who was my close, who I thought was a close friend, she didn't come round, and I haven't spoken to her since it happened. You know, that friendship ended. I lost 2 friends that year, and you know, that friendship ended because she wasn't there for me, and so I was sort of, that was happening at the same time, and I think I just let each day happen, and then the funeral happened, and the funeral was actually, the funeral was very good, for lots of different reasons. Michael was Catholic, and in the Catholic tradition, suicides are not normally given. Suicide is considered a sin, but this particular the church that he was part of and who did the funeral, they had a very enlightened attitude. He was given a full requiem mass.
Wow. Okay.
So it was about an hour and a half. His coffin was placed under a statue of the risen Christ. The priest actually took us through at a point in the service. The priest took us through a prayer where we were asked to imagine Michael being embraced by Jesus. And I think the real special part of it, he was surrounded by people who loved him and wanted him. And, you know, his funeral, I would say about 800 people turned up for his funeral.
Wow.
You know, there were children, there were kids, there were ex-pupils. The local football team had a 2-minute silence for him before a match. The outpouring of grief was extraordinary. I mean, he touched so many people's lives and made such a positive impact on so many people's lives that moment of when I think that's what, you know, he didn't do anything wrong. He wasn't a wicked person. He wasn't an evil person. He was somebody who loved, almost, maybe he just loved too much. And at the end of the day, what happened, what was the trigger for this sort of long fuse, this 12, 14-month fuse, was heartbreak. You know, his heart was broken and he couldn't get back. And it was really hard, because he was surrounded by people who loved him, who were just constantly trying to pull him back. You know, I guess, you know, the ice broke, fell through, and we were all there trying to pull him through.
I appreciate that. Thank you for, I mean, that answered a lot. Yeah, that's crazy. That don't make no sense.
I would imagine that's probably the hardest part to deal with, you know, have after the fact, because you did love him and care about him so much, to have that feeling of, okay, is there something else that I could have done or maybe said or something like that? That's got to be part, I would imagine anyway, that's got to be the hardest part to deal with.
I think anybody who is is a survivor of suicide is going to ask that question. You know, it's somebody who's been left. Yeah, I mean, no, hang on, that was the wrong phrase. If someone's left behind by a suicide, every single one of you saying, "What could I have said something? Could I have done something?" I mean, I'm haunted by the last time I saw him. The last time I spoke to him. In that last moment, I know I let him down, because it was the day before he asked to go back into hospital. It was about 10 to 10. In the UK, there's always a drama on the TV that goes from 9 o'clock till 10. And I was engrossed in it. And he came to the door, and I'd normally always leave my door on the latch so he could just walk in whenever he wanted to. And he walked in, and he said, "Let's go for a walk. Need to go for a walk now." And I said, "Oh, it's just the end of this TV program. Let us watch the end of the TV program, and then I'll come for a walk." And he said, "Okay, all right, I'll see you in 10 minutes." And then he went out, and that was the last time I ever saw him. And his mum came back round, and she said, "Oh, Michael doesn't feel like going for a walk." And I said, "Okay, I'll see him tomorrow night then." And then the following day, he went into hospital, and I never saw him again. And I keep on thinking, if I had to watch the end of this fucking program. In that moment, watching TV was suddenly more important. And I mean, for the rest of the year, I didn't watch television. I didn't switch the TV on for about a month afterwards, and I barely watched any television because I felt like I don't think I would have been. I'm not arrogant enough to think that I could have guessed what was going to happen, right, or that I could have said anything that would have stopped him.
Right.
I just think that if it was in his head at that moment, did he want to say goodbye? Was this his last moment of saying goodbye? I don't know. But all I know is that I didn't go with him when he asked me to, and I'll always regret that.
That's hard.
You okay?
Yeah. I'm not. I'm glad I still cry. I'm not ashamed. I'm not worried about crying about it, because when I think about him, and since you asked me to do this, Ron, I've been thinking about him a lot. So I've been crying a lot, and I'm glad I still cry about it, because that means, I still miss him. I still love him.
Right.
He's still important. I never try and stop myself from crying, because that means that I still feel.
At this point, your sadness is an expression of that love for him. So yeah, I can definitely understand that.
I have a question.
Can you hear? You can hear what?
Yeah, project your voice,
You
brother,
know,
too.
listening to when you were saying how, when he asked you to go outside and everything, and you wanted to finish, and apparently in the beginning you really felt that, maybe that if you had have taken that walk with him, that something different may have happened, right? What did you do to kind of cope with that, to get beyond that, to get past that?
I know that I did anything. I was in shock. I know I was in shock. And I think I wasn't consciously making any decisions at all. You go through the motions. What motions? I don't know what they were. I mean, everything seems like a blur. I know that I was very fortunate in that my manager at work, and I mean, I'd only been in the job for about 3 months, and I phoned her up and I told her what had happened, and she basically, she authorised leave, which was about approximately 2.5 weeks. So, she said, don't come in. And I mean, it's actually quite remarkable when I think about it. She just basically said, I don't want to see you in here for the next 2 weeks. So,
like, you're not going to be any good to me right now. So, go on, take the time off.
Yeah. So, yes, and I can only imagine that she just knew. So I just think, or maybe she'd had the experience herself in her life, that she just got it straight away. Yeah. Because that's not a regular policy in employment in this country. You'd have to go to the doctor and get signed off. And she signed me off personally, so I didn't have to worry about work. And I think for about 3 days I didn't get out of bed, didn't get dressed. People came round to see me, and that was the other thing that was really interesting. It was quite surprising that the people who did come and see me weren't the people who I would have expected to, and the people who were friends. I did have friends come round, friends that understood, but another friend who was my close, who I thought was a close friend, she didn't come round, and I haven't spoken to her since it happened. That friendship ended. I lost 2 friends that year, and that friendship ended because she wasn't there for me, and so I was sort of, that was happening at the same time, and I think I just let each day happen, and then the funeral happened, and the funeral was actually, the funeral was very good, for lots of different reasons. Michael was Catholic, and in the Catholic tradition, suicides are not normally given. Suicide is considered a sin, but this particular the church that he was part of and who did the funeral, they had a very enlightened attitude. He was given a full requiem mass.
Wow. Okay.
So it was about an hour and a half. His coffin was placed under a statue of the risen Christ. The priest actually took us through at a point in the service. The priest took us through a prayer where we were asked to imagine Michael being embraced by Jesus. And I think the real special part of it that was probably lost on most of the congregation was when the priest was dismissing the congregation, he quoted Oscar Wilde. which for myself and those of us who knew, knowing that Oscar Wilde was like the biggest puff in British literature, I think it was an acknowledgement from an enlightened priest about the way things should be, and the quote, which I think is quite apt, is when you're lying in the gutter, all you can see is the stars. And it's very much about that moment of knowing when you're at your absolute lowest, you've just got to look up, because that's the only way to go. That was very good. And then afterwards, getting back. That's the awful part about grieving and losing someone is 2 months down the line or 3 months down the line, when this is the new normal and you're trying to get used to this normal life that isn't normal.
Michelle, may I ask you a question?
Yeah.
There are times and episodes in our lives where it's an old American saying that this moment is where the rubber meets the road. And what that saying, have you ever heard that saying before?
No, say it again. This is a moment when the river meets the road.
When the rubber meets the road.
Rubber meets the road. Right?
Yeah. And so the analogy is like, as good as any car is built, it's all of no use if the tires are not good. So the performance of this car, whatever kind of car it is, it's really, at the end of the day, dependent on how well the tire holds to the road. You understand? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I say that because I want to ask you a question. It's like saying everything that anyone has ever been through, to get through it, whatever you believe, and I mean this literally and literally, whatever it is you believe, we're going to find out how much you believe what you say you believe, because we'll know by your behavior and your commitment to whatever you say you believe. My question to you is this: how did you get through it? What worked for you?
Just getting on with life. Just getting on with it. I didn't stop talking about it. After the funeral and stuff, my family were shattered. They were devastated. So I spent some time with them. That was actually quite hard for me. That was difficult because they needed support, but I needed support too. So I found that I limited how much time I could spend, because there's, I had no right to expect it from family, but I felt like I wasn't allowed to grieve in front of them. So I would grieve with friends who knew him as well. And I prayed a lot. I still had the keys to his house, and the family knew this, so they knew that could go into his house, and I used to go, and I would go in the house, and I would just sit there. Which seems a bit weird, I guess, but I just think I think what I did was probably, without knowing it, without consciously being aware of it, I just went through a long goodbye. And I think also because I've suffered loss before. I mean, my mum had died 20 years previously. And that year, I'd lost another friend had died from a heart attack, and an elderly friend had passed away. I mean, she was really the only one that was allowed to. She was in her 90s. But Ian was 52 and he'd had a heart attack. And Michael was in his mid-40s, so I think, yeah, I just sort of, you know, I kind of knew how to adjust to losing someone you love, probably because what I'd gone through with losing my mum so early, and realizing exactly what grief is. That grief is the price of love, the price of loving someone. And you know, I think everybody who ever falls in love knows the tragedy, because you know that at some point you'll lose them. But it's sort of, I guess I'm still saying goodbye to him as well. You know, I've still got stuff in the house that he's given me. And you know, I've been going through declutters and throwing out stages, and you know, it's just stuff that I should probably go and give to a charity shop, but I'm not going to do it. You know, so it's and he'll laugh at me. And this is the other thing. He was a real comedian. He was the sort of person who would, and I guess I now recognise it as a trait. You know, the person who is the life and soul of the party, the person who always asks you how you are first and gets you talking about you, so he doesn't have to talk about himself. And he's the person that wants to make you laugh because it's entertaining to him. And I've realised he was the joker, he was the comedian because he needed to be distracted from himself. And this is sort of, in a way, that should stand as as a bit of not a red flag, but it should be a flag, an amber flag. If there's someone in your group who is constantly always happy, because nobody is always happy. You know, there are always times when we're sad. So if nobody can express sadness and can express anger and frustration, if everything they ever give you is a joke, then that's got to be a warning sign. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of some of the funniest comedians you very often find out later on, like even people like Richard Pryor suffered from severe depression. You know, tried to take his own life at one point. That kind of thing. Something about that mentality of like deep depression and going through a lot of things, it seems like breeds or brings out the humorous side of a personality, maybe as a coping mechanism.
Absolutely. I mean, in the last 2 years through the pandemic, I mean, I switched off the news and I switched on the comedy channel. You know, I've basically become obsessed with comedy and comedians, and it's been really interesting because there's a charity in the UK called Calm, which is campaign against living miserably, which a lot of comedians they do gigs for.
That's cool.
And they raise money for. And they did there was a series of interviews where they were all interviewing each other, sort of British comedians, and they talk about their own mental health. And in fact, a comedian that I went to see last week, is in his stand-up routine, he talked about his mental health, talked about having CBT and how, because every comedian right now is talking about their life through the pandemic, through COVID. So it's sort of, you suddenly realise, because comedy now is about personal experience and observation, and it is very good, because they'll tell you the sad story and then they'll kill you with a joke, and that's exactly what Michael would do. I mean, he wouldn't tell me the sad story. I would have to tell him the sad story, and he would be really good. He was a great counsellor. He would listen. He would give great advice. And then when you were okay and you talked it all out, he would rip the shit out of you. and he would not stop until you were doubled up, laughing, crying with laughter. And you'd go back home, and whatever it was, whether it was work or a boyfriend or whatever it was, family, whoever was getting you down, you do the counselling bit, and then he would just rip you to shreds and make you laugh.
Now I see why you friends with Ron.
I go hard.
But I think the sad thing is he clearly needed that for himself. And he what he needed was him. He needed himself. He needed somebody to be him for him. And he was such a rare character, such a rare person. I don't think there was anyone there that was like that for him. It was, I think the person, I tell you who, I can remember, do you remember when Robin Williams took his own life?
Yes, we do.
Yeah. I think that was a year before the trigger event for Michael, and we were both watching, because I mean we were kids in the 70s and the 80s. We grew up with Morgan Mindy. We loved that. We loved that, and then of course with the Dead Poets Society, and that was the thing. I think that was one of those films, and that was Michael. That was the kind of teacher that Michael was. He was the kind of teacher that he could tell when a kid was right on the edge and was going to pull through the net, and he would pull them back. And I am absolutely certain that there are adults today whose lives are on a different track, no other reason than Michael was their teacher.
Wow.
Amen.
And he was, he won a teaching award. He won. We have these. I mean, it is nice. I think it's a bit of a political gimmick. I know Michael said it was, but it is a nice thing. Teachers should be paid better, but instead they're given these statuettes. But hey.
Oh, look, I can go down that path with you all day. So we could definitely talk about that.
We call it peanuts here.
Yeah.
Lord
Lord knows
Yeah,
teachers should get paid like doctors, but
That's what I said.
Agreed.
yeah.
They're the ones teaching doctors how to be a doctor.
So nothing gets done without them.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Does anybody else have a question or anything you all want to ask her? Amy just joined us. What's going on, sister?
Hey.
Hey, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Does anybody have another question they would like to ask her or bring to the table, man? Anyone? Michelle, we got about 12 minutes, 13 minutes left. I guess we'll end it with this question. What advice would you give anyone that is trying to, on a daily basis, to survive an experience like you experienced 5 years ago? What would you tell them?
Oh, jeez.
And take your time.
It's so difficult because it's such a unique experience. It's. I think it's about. I think the best advice I can say is try to find a way to practice mindfulness in being, allow yourself to cry and don't put a limit on it. If you need to spend all day crying, then cry all day. Don't feel guilty if someone makes you laugh. Don't feel guilty. Don't feel ashamed that you forgot them for 5 or 10 minutes. And I mean, the thing is, I think everybody has that moment, and it's sort of, and that's why it's quite a dangerous thing, because if someone does take their own life, it's not unusual if someone in their friendship circle of the family then does it as well. And a lot of charities and support groups, like post-suicide support groups, survivor support groups, they're there to support the family and friends, because they know that someone else might do it. They're triggered by the event to do it themselves. So there was a charity that was really very supportive here, called, it's a local charity, and it's called If You Care, Share, and it was basically they're there to support all of the survivors, not just families but the friends as well. And quite often I think friendship groups are not always considered, and friends know such a different. Your friends know a part of you that you never give to your family.
Right. That's true.
And friendship group, and when you die, your family get, and friends are often totally, they're invited to the funeral, they're invited to pay their respects, when in fact, particularly if you're not close to your family, your friends are usually the ones that know you the best. And friends can often feel more unsupported. So I think it's often, I think the friends are the ones that need to really pull together the people that knew that person, and they need to spend time together, and they need to talk about that person. And that's the other thing. You need to talk about them, and you need to say that you're angry, to just cry and laugh and just remember all the good things as well as remembering the bad things. You can't deny any aspect of that person. I guess at the end, it's a mountain climb to acceptance.
Michelle, I think this is probably going to be, even if the ratings or the numbers aren't as high as we're accustomed to, I want to say this in front of everyone. I think this is going to be the best show we've had.
Yeah, I agree.
And we really appreciate you taking up the time and making yourself vulnerable to have this conversation about things that everyone in this room on some level, one or another, can relate to. And you have no idea how much I love you personally, even more. And I have not always been the best friend to you, but you love me anyway. I am more grateful for you being in my life and all of my family's life here and everything. And I'm gonna ask these brothers if we could just have a 2-hour show and we just let you run for the first hour, or 50 minutes, or 53 minutes. Because I think every single thing that you have said deserves attention. Every single thing. Even if we could edit, and we could, I think that would be doing you a total injustice. So, if it's okay, I would like to run you.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
You do what you need to do.
Okay.
I think your listeners, they're going to have some stamina if they're going to do 2 hours.
They'll be all right.
They'll be all right.
They'll be all right.
They will be okay.
They'll be okay.
Besides, this will be on forever. So, others don't get to see it. Might help a lot of people.
Anyone got any parting words? Get ready to let her go?
Just wanted to say thank you again for letting us your time and letting us hear your story. I know it was difficult, so thank you for going through that for us. We definitely appreciate it.
Got me all teary-eyed over here.
I know, man.
You just
I'm
hide. You just hide.
No, that's not hide. No, that's not hide, man. I'm sad,
Seriously.
man. I'm very emotional.
I feel pain.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Most definitely. I want to say thank you too, man. We really, really appreciate you.
Tom,
This one.
Do you know what? Just let it out. Because,
Yeah, Los.
right?
Yeah, let it out, Los. Let it out.
No, but
Go to the microphone, please.
guys
Yeah.
need to cry.
yeah, no, and I do. Miss my mom, my brother.
Yeah.
I
Sweetheart.
think that's why women survive. That's why women survive. We cry. You guys bottle it all up. You need to cry.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. Thank you, brother.
If that's the case, I'm gonna live till I'm 150, cause I cry.
Shit, I'm gonna be eternal. I'm eternal.
I'm learning.
Yeah, that's the
I'm
key to immortality, then cry. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right. Take care, love. We're gonna go ahead and end the feed. If you can, just stay with us one more, maybe a minute or two after we finish. But thank you so very much.
Okay. All right then.
Okay. So you just close that out.
Hate you. Glad y'all stuck with us through this, and we apologize for the video. I'm glad the audio was. I hope the audio was working for you. It seemed to be going through clearly, so hopefully everybody could at least hear what Michelle was saying. But we apologize for the audio. That was filmed all the way from the UK, so I think that gave us a little issue when trying to broadcast it live. So hopefully, y'all understand, and thank you for bearing with us. Right. Basically, she just talked about how difficult it is in trying to deal with the loss of a loved one when they take their own life like that, because of course, like she said, she didn't see it coming. It was, for most outward appearance, he seemed normal, had gotten out of the hospital recently, so they thought he was doing well and on his road to recovery. I think at one point she even specifically says that, you know, family and friends thought he had turned the corner. Maybe he was finally past, you know, the issues that he had been having. So it's sad that, you know, he had other plans, that he really had, like she said, gotten away from it, gotten away from the hospital and things like that, so that he would actually have the opportunity to be able to do what he decided to do. And as you can hear from what she expressed all the way through, that is her pain, her loss, her regret at not being able to stop him from doing what he was ultimately decided to do. So hope you was able to draw as much from her words as we were able to when we were conducting the interview with her. Really a wonderful person. I'm so glad she decided to share her time with us. So as far as the conversation goes, what were y'all thinking after watching the interview, or after we did the interview with Michelle?
I watched it 3 times. You know, really, I watched it 3 times, plus getting it ready so what we can show. I don't know, man. It's like I don't want to experience that kind of loss. Never. Not when someone that close to me. Oh no, I'm not. You know, I don't want to experience that. So I'm glad she did it. Hey, thank you so much, because I know that was probably hard for you, or it might have been worth it. You know, because I've been reading a lot about it, and it seems like it's good to talk about it. If you did that, talk about it, deal with it, like she said herself. You know?
Yeah.
So,
Hey, Ron, you said Deb. I don't know how to pronounce the last name.
Just call her
She's
Dr.
a
O.
doctor.
Yeah, she's a psychiatrist.
Okay, yeah, she was saying that one of the toughest things about being a survivor is the anger at the loved one who killed themselves. That's also something that happens.
Yeah, very
Right.
valid point. I would imagine you have to feel a certain degree of anger at that person, because you're thinking to yourself, why didn't you come to me? Why
Right,
didn't you talk to me?
right,
Why didn't you give me the opportunity to save you? You know,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Right.
But like we were saying on the last show, once you gotten to that point, you're there.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody to stop you. That's really what you're trying to avoid that. So that's interesting. You know.
Man.
yeah, that's so crazy. But I have a bunch of more information about it. Y'all saw on the video where you can call the suicide prevention lifeline. Their number is 1-800-273-TALK, which is 8255. And they go to their website, which is suicideprevention.org. They have a lot of information about loss survivors. It tells you all about how you can help them. There's another one that's the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and then with them, it also matches the same number of the other one, but they also say you can text the word TALK to 741-741, and somebody will be there to pick up for you. And they have a lot of information on their website about how to help people, how to try to see if someone's in that, and just try to prevent this from happening. Then there's another one. There's a hashtag Real Convo, REALCONVO. It's a guide to how to talk to a suicide loss survivor. They have a lot of different information there that you could also do. There's another one. It's called After a Suicide Recovery Directory, and it is personalgriefcoach.net, and that will bring you to this page. And there's tons of information that tries to help you, if you know someone, how to be able to talk to them, how to be able to deal with it yourself, because that's another friend of yours that's they're going through something, so you got to know how to deal with it. And then there's another one. It's called SAVE, and it's a Suicide Awareness Voices of Education. It's a grief support for suicide loss survivors. And there are, it's save.org. So visit them, lots and lots of information up there. And then one last one I have here, it is Survivors of Suicide. And it's www.survivorsofsuicide.com. And they have stories and a lot of different things. And also, again, this one I think is more about some people's stories, and also what maybe some people that help them get through it. So
like sharing stories about people
a lot. And
okay.
Just about all the ones I mentioned, they do have people that actually share their story and how they how they dealt with it and what helped them amongst their friends and family that helped them. So every one of those has that. They talk about how to talk to children that are survivors of that.
Oh man.
And it tells you, because if you don't at least look some of this up and you run into that situation, you might make things worse, and then that person kills themselves. So you have to be real careful how you approach, especially children. That's why all this stuff is so important, because if you approach them in a certain way, then they're so grief struck in that, man, you know what, and they just go join their friend, and you don't want to know what to say. I'll hear this one here. It says how to talk to suicide survivors. That real combo, that hashtag real combo says number one, I don't know what to say, but I'm here for you. That's something you'd want to say. Refrain from saying I understand what you're going through, because you don't. Number three was do not ask intrusive questions about how the person died, because these are questions, I guess, that mess with. Avoid pat advice and hurtful cliches. Do not place value judgments on the suicide. Do not assign or imply blame. Be proactive about offering help. Don't be afraid to talk about the person who died. Be patient and do not disappear.
You know what I would like to know, man? I would like to know the numbers on those survivors. Like, what's the numbers on the survivors that commit suicide because of that?
That's an excellent question.
Right. And I'm sure there's lots and lots of information. I never got into none of this, but because we're doing this show, I start looking. Next thing I know, I found, and this is just 5-6 websites,
right?
And there was still more. So I just figured these were the ones here. These important. They seem like they're really helping. Other ones, all of them help, and they all pretty much say the same thing: know how to deal with these people, because they're hurting real bad.
Yeah, I think in any grief situation, you have a lot of. Like, I think one of the things you said was don't give pat advice, and especially the passing the judgment on the person who committed suicide, the suicide,
Right.
I don't know why I'm trying to think of a term for that, but I think it would be, if you're talking to somebody who survived losing a loved one like that, I think it's real easy to, if you have those kind of views, because like me personally, I could never see myself committing suicide. Not saying that I haven't ever thought about it, but I could never see myself doing it. And so if I'm talking to somebody who's dealing with that situation, I could see it being very easy for me to actually go into my own, looking at it from my own perspective and going, well, what was wrong with him? Why did he give up? Why was he weak? I may not say it in those blunt terms, but that would be the underlying thought. And you don't even mean it to sound that way, but the person that you're talking to will pick up on that and very well, take an offense where you're trying to help and you're not understanding why they're not getting better, because you're not stopping to think. You have to pause for a moment and kind of realize how it's going to sound to the other person.
You would only be able to do that if it was a 3 friendship, that we both, this was our fucking best friend.
True.
So we're going this together. So in that sense, I can think you can both talk about that, but not you coming into this. You didn't know that person like that, man. Don't be saying that. Like you said, you don't mean no harm.
Like if I off myself and then you and Ruck sitting there talking about it, y'all could have that conversation.
Right.
But it wouldn't be like, somebody, one of your friends, and I'm talking to you about it, but I don't know that friend.
And they start asking these
questions.
Have that be like, nah, come on now.
That makes it. That's a valid point.
But you got to think though, they don't mean no harm. They're just trying to figure out what exactly
process.
Right.
Process.
So
I could see a friend close, if it's a close friend group like that. I could see them using that as a way to process it, because, like she said, with the anger that you would have to deal with, you're gonna have to get that out, and with at least a close friend, somebody who understands that the pain, you might have a chance of being able to work through that a lot easier.
Right. One more thing I wanted to say about it too. International Survivors of Suicide Loss Day is November 19th, 2022. It's what they say, event registration and location will be posted midsummer. But if you want more information on that, you either go to your local, AFSP chapter, which is the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, or they have an email address to survivorday@afsp.org, and you'll get more information on that. And this is somewhere where a lot of people that experience this get together and talk about it. See if it helps them out too. And I think a lot of these people are people that I'm good. Like Michelle could probably go to that.
Right,
You know,
right.
and talk, cause she's pretty much doing what they do. They tell their story. You know, so, but yeah, there's a lot of information on there. All of this information will have links at the bottom, you know, for you to come back to watch the interview again or something. Yeah, we'll have all links there ready for you. So, yeah, very important.
It's interesting to me that, we get the chance to have this conversation because ultimately, if you think about it, Michelle, gracious enough to come on and talk about this at length with us. It's just, this is the kind of conversations that we need to be having because, like we said at the beginning, we don't talk about this enough. And if you get this word out, if you get this information out, if you let people realize the repercussions of what they do, maybe that could be the deterrent that keeps them from taking that action. When you can actually see the pain or hear about the pain that somebody else feels because they've decided to take their life, that may be the kind of thing that gives you a pause. You might be okay with it. You may have made up your mind that that's what you want to do, but realizing how much you might hurt the people that you leave behind as far as your family, your friends. Hopefully there's people that you care about, that you love, that when you realize the amount of pain you might leave them in or the predicament you might leave them in with the actions that you take, hopefully that might be something even that could make you think about it for a moment and think, do I really want to leave this burden on them? Do I really want to saddle them with this pain for the rest of their lives? Because that's not a pain that's going to go away. If I had a family member or a child or loved one who committed suicide, I'm going to think about them for the rest of my life.
Right.
Do you think that once a person gets to the point where they're at that point where they're going to commit suicide, that they're thinking that clearly? Because at that point, I don't like, I'm having a hard time thinking if they're at that point that they're actually worrying about the pain that they may leave behind versus the pain that's the reason they're taking their own life to get away from.
But in some instances that at least from people who I've talked to who say they were thinking about doing it, part of their reasoning is that they were trying to get away. They thought that their presence was causing others pain and being a burden to people around them. But then when you talk to them and you get them to realize, no, that's not the case, or you at least make them see, well, if nobody else, to me, your presence being absent would cause me pain. It has helped as far as getting them to realize, okay, maybe I'm not seeing this correctly.
Right.
And so you kind of talk them, or at least I have talked, kind of talk them off that ledge a little bit. So I'm not saying in every case it would be the thing. It's not going to always be a trigger, but hopefully for somebody out there, who knows, it might.
Yeah. And I agree with you 100%. But that's also why I also specifically preface those who are already at that point where they're gonna kill themselves. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where they're gonna take their lives. So, once they get to that point, it's kind of like I can't imagine them at that point thinking about.
You don't think at that point it would matter
right
to them because they're already so far down that line of thinking.
I was thinking the same thing when you were saying that. I'm like, if you're there and you're thinking about it, you're not going to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to do it.
Right.
If I'm going to do it, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about what I'm about to do.
Right.
That's it. If I have to think about something, my daughter, I'm not going to do it.
Right.
And that would be the first thing I'm not doing this shit.
I mean, we can only speculate either way.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, you never know. I mean, how can you even fathom what's going through the head, through the thoughts of a person who's at that point right now? Not, you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Especially the ones that do it.
And those are the ones I'm talking about.
That's like,
you know what I'm saying?
That was going through your head, because we talked about last time where your body will not let you do this if it doesn't want to. But so you went past that point. Wow.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
I don't know. I just have the hardest time imagining what it would be like to get to that point. I can't wrap my head around it, you know. It's just really one of those things. Like I said, I've had thoughts about it. Of course, I think everybody at some point or another, you know, thinks about it. I could never see myself taking any action on it, but even the thought of it felt alien in my mind.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's just not something that.
Yeah, and I don't know, man. I have to be honest. I've never even considered it. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
And I'm not saying that. Well, I guess I am saying that nothing has ever gotten that dire. You know what I'm saying? To make me even consider it. And I've been through some shit, as we all have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But maybe whatever my threshold is to push me to that point, maybe I just haven't reached that yet. But just exactly what you said, it seems so alien to me.
Right.
But I don't think anyone starts off unless you can
Agreed.
tie that,
Agreed.
unless you can tie that to some type of chemical imbalance or, you know, mental illness. I don't think anyone starts off with a gene or something innate that's in them that makes them, once something happens, they go, oh, I want to kill myself.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And those
I
that
don't
do
know,
that
man.
are seeking attention. I'm following people that always, I want to kill myself. You're seeking attention. I gotta do it. If you wanted to,
you
you
do
do
have those. You do have those.
I have noticed personally, man, that the people that either actually went through it or they attempted and failed, and they failed not for attention-seeking purposes. They just didn't use the right dosage,
Right.
or the gun had a blank. You know, those kind of things.
That's to that.
I have noticed one of the characteristics that all of those individuals have. They are very, very sensitive. And when I say they're sensitive, I'm not talking about like only you say something and it hurts their feelings and they go running away crying. I mean, that's sensitive, but that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about when I say sensitive is they are very aware of everything that's going on around them at any and every given point in time. And what we would say, oh man, you're overthinking it, or hey man, you're putting too much priority to the details. But that individual is like, because they're so afraid of rejection, they're paying attention to everything around them because they don't want to be rejected. When they're paying attention to everything around them, notice how y'all start having these conversations. And this person may be someone you've known all your life. You start having these kind of conversations. Hey man, did something I do? Did I make you mad when that happened? Or hey man, when I moved my potato chips from in front of you, you didn't think I didn't want you not to have them, right? I was just doing it because it was something, you know, little things like that.
I know people like that too.
So when you say exactly,
Right.
so and that's why I said they're very, very sensitive. Now, am I saying give them administer to those individuals you know personally like that? Should you give them the suicide skill? No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying
call this number.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Don't make a problem where there isn't one. But what I am saying is, in terms of the psychology and the emotional intelligence of individuals that suffer from suicidal ideations, that is a part of their repertoire. And I think part of it is because they invest so much in that level of self-awareness of everything that's going on around them, they can kind of miscue everything that's going on and apply something that may not necessarily be relevant or real.
Mm-hmm.
So after doing that for so long, these individuals that are already sensitive, when they've accumulated enough data to say, hey, I just can't take anymore. That was the reason why one of the things that some people said I was very aggressive last episode. I don't think I was, because I don't think that anyone that was looking at that show and didn't really understand a suicide, I don't think they were getting the point we was making.
Yeah.
So that's why we was being very aggressive and forthright in everything we were saying.
Yeah.
Because everything I'm about to say right now is predicated upon you understanding what we just said.
Right.
A person that is suicidal, if you leave them to their own whims, they're going to go left with everything and interpret in the way they interpret everything. But you also have to remember, if they are genuinely suicidal, the reason that they're feeling that way or they are acting in those manners is because it's not that I don't love my kids. Like, if you don't understand anything we've said, I need this to be very, very made clear. It's not that they are selfish. Now, if a person wants to have that attitude towards it, be my guest. But just don't come talk to me about trying to bring out some kind of meaning of why this happened to your loved one. Because your mind is made up.
Right.
But if you want to know what we're talking about, it's not that they didn't love their mothers. It's not that they didn't love their fathers. The pain they were enduring, psychologically and or physically, was greater than any and everything else that had some form of priority in their lives. And every single organism on the planet wants to avoid pain. Now, however you want to interpret that, that's your business. You'll find no argument from me. I just want you to understand the basic premise. That's why you lose a lot of those individuals that are at risk, because they don't want to hear, I understand. If you understood, you wouldn't be saying that.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Next thing, man. The reason why I think this is so important is not only because I think right now, man, everyone is in kind of a bad space. We're at war. Well, countries are at war. Gas prices going up. You know, you're getting,
making more poor people.
There are a lot more poor people. People
still dealing with COVID.
You know what I mean? We're still dealing with COVID and the paranoia associated with that. Right or wrong, we're still dealing with that. So the world right now is in a kind of a bad emotional state if you was to look at the whole thing cumulatively. But the importance of this conversation is, at least for me, I could spot out to you guys I could spot out to you statistics all day long about what it means to be a survivor of a suicide. But I don't think that'll reach you. It'll sound good, but I don't think you would connect to it. When I lived in Atlanta, there was a gentleman, I'm not going to give his whole name, we're just going to call him Roger. Roger was a very intelligent individual, highly intelligent, but very, very extra sensitive. Mm-hmm. I met Roger because I was working at a company where we did psych assessments and all that kind of stuff, pre-employment screening or what have you. And Roger was really good with computers and statistics, brilliant gentleman. He came on with us. Roger and I had known each other about 3-4 months. This is around the early 2000s. And the reason I'm into classical music the way that I am is because Roger was able to explain and explore and open up for even the dumbest person the significance and beauty of classical music. And Roger taught me why Beethoven, in his opinion, is probably the greatest musician ever. Because he said, Ron, if you listen to one of his symphonies, what he was telling people at that time was, I did this first part of the symphony this way because that's what everyone is listening to. That's the style. But after this break, what he was telling you was, this is how music is going to go in the future. You're dealing with a brilliant individual. Mm-hmm. When Roger told me that, I knew then I was dealing with a very brilliant individual. And not only that, he didn't lie. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we struck up a kinship. One night, it was a Friday night. I was on my way home. It's an hour drive from where I lived in Carrollton versus Atlanta, where I worked. And then I went to school at night. And I called Roger and I was like, hey man, how you doing? Tra-la-la. And Roger said, man, I got to let go from the job today, you know, and so he was in a bad place. So I was like, oh man, that's messed up. You know the things that you run through normally. You would say the list. Hey man, it's gonna get better. Keep your head up. You're gonna get a new job. You don't need that job. But, you know, that stuff. And so I said, Roger, man, look, man, I know you're going through it or what have you. Hey man, let's get together tomorrow or Sunday before, you know, Monday, whatever. Let's go to Hooters and have some wings. Roger responded to me, man, that would be great, but I wish we had more time. I said, Roger, man, don't worry about it, man. You're gonna find another job. You good. Just like you found this one.
What he meant by that when he said
I didn't know what he meant.
Yeah.
The answer I'm giving you is letting you know.
Okay.
I didn't know what he meant.
Yeah.
So he says, I said, man, you know, you're going to have another good job, man. Don't worry about it. You know, everybody go through this. You good, man. Don't worry about it. I got you. We go to Who's I pay for it. I'm not tripping. His exact words after that response. I wish we had more time. Roger, you good. Don't worry about it, man. I know you're in a bad place or whatever, but don't worry about it, man. We're going to be all right, man. So I tell you what we're going to do, man. I'm going to give you a call tomorrow or Sunday or whatever. We're going to go to Douglasville and we're going to go to Hooters. Brian, I wish we had more time, man. All right, bro. Well, I feel you. You know, I know you're in a bad place right now, so I'll give you space. I'll let you go. This is Ron before degree 1. If you want to, like, say Batman year 2, this is Ron degree 1. You know what I mean? Right. Not even degree 1. This is like Ron, the dude you all saw leave Houston. Okay. I get home. I call him up Saturday. No answer. Sunday, because I have to drive 50 miles back to work. I'm not trying to drive 30 miles somewhere to go meet up with him. Because, you know, hey, man, I drive 50 miles one way to work Monday through Friday before I have to drive 50 miles back home to go to school for 3-4 hours at night. I'm tired.
Right.
I walk into the office Monday morning, man, and the head of HR pulls me to the side. She pulls me to a room. She's like, hey, Ronnie, talk to you. All right, cool. So I sit down. Now, at this point, I'm not being funny, y'all. I'm being very real. At this point, I'm like, why is this woman pulling me in from HR? Am I about to lose my job? Okay, what kind of nigga stuff I got to deal with now? You know what I mean? What have you done wrong now, Ron? You know what I mean? Like, I'm the only black dude in this very affluent, you know, IO psychology firm, and they're very good. They paid my way to go through school, so you understand? Like, I'm vested in it, but I'm like, I still understand what I am. Being real with you.
Right.
Ron, I want to tell you, Roger killed himself Saturday night. I've met a lot of people since that has happened. I've had a lot of experiences. And even talking about it right now hits hard.
As it should, man.
And they let me go home for the day. I went home, and I hadn't been that hurt since I lost my cousin Butch on a Friday. And I couldn't make sense of it. I was very angry. And I had suffered from depression my own life, but I never took myself out. So the next day for work, I called in. I said, look, y'all, I ain't gonna make it. I'm good. You know, got a lot going on in my head. And the president of the company, who is the same individual that single-handedly made sure that the company made allowance for me to be able to go to school while they pay for my way to go to school. So you calling me, I'm listening.
Right.
He said, man, I need you to come into this office today. I say, whatever his name was, I said, hey, man, I'm going through too much right now. I don't want to be around other people. And he's a psychologist, clinical psychologist, very brilliant, beautiful man. He said, hey, man, I need you in this office. And I need you to get up out that bed and come into this office. So now I'm the mad black man coming to work.
Right.
I get to work, got an attitude. Wrong, number one. But not understandable, but wrong. He said, man, when I was in, doing my internship, we used to deal with these kind of situations so frequently that we would say something like, yeah, man, such and such, they went on and jumped over the ledge. They hung themselves like we all said they would, and they would laugh about it, make jokes about it, all that kind of stuff. And at the time, I didn't understand it. And I really thought when he told me that, I thought you was like being a really cruel bastard. I thought you was being really, you know, what you've been to me personally is not lining up what I'm seeing professionally. You know, like why would you have that attitude towards anybody's life? And so as the day went on and he went out to go to one of his meetings, he walked by my desk and he was like, and then I saw the human part of him come out. He said, hey man, I know it's tough. It's hard, man. I know. And I said, thank you, whatever his name was. I said, thank you, man. I appreciate that. He was like, hey, man, but I know it's tough. I didn't understand at the time what he was trying to do, but I'm so grateful for him doing that with me at that time. Because after I graduated out of school in England and came back to America, I worked as an ACT team member in the Assertive Community Treatment Team here in Houston. And it's a community-based center. And they deal with that all the time. So much that whenever I would have clients, some of them would kill themselves, some of them would get killed, some of them would do something outlandish and they would hurt themselves. That happened so frequently, I started taking a very what's the word I'm looking for? I started taking a very I started being very cynical towards those situations, which were people's actual real lives. But as a caregiver, I started taking a cynical approach because I saw it so much. I saw it so much. Right. So now I'm having to understand what my supervisor, my president, was trying to tell me. Right. It's not that you're a bad person, man, but you're going to have to get through these moments. And staying in bed and isolating is not two of them. Way to do it. Yeah. Okay. So I said all that to say, I am a survivor of suicide. I had only known that man 4 months. But I'm going to be honest with y'all, I'm going to tell y'all what really got me. He left me a letter.
Really? Specifically to you?
By name.
Wow.
Roger left me things from his home that I had to go to his home and pick up. Music, a book that I still have to this day called The Lives of the Great Composers, a DVD player, and a couple of other electronic things. And when I walked in, I knew how he did it because this is, about 4 days later, I saw the blood on the wall. Whether you really believe or understand suicide or not, for me personally, that was one of the greatest compliments anybody could have ever given me.
Right.
You left here and you wrote me a letter.
Right.
In your last minutes, he was thinking about you.
In
his last minutes being around on this planet, he stopped and thought about you.
To this day, I deal with that.
Man, you mind if I ask you a question? And if it's too much,
No, you
good. When you were on the phone with him and he kept saying, "I wish we had more time," do you think if you had have picked up on that and been seasoned enough to hear him, and I know your character, you would have not just been like, hey man, I know you're in a bad place, I'll let you go, talk to you later, whatever, I'll call you Sunday. You probably would have done what anybody that picks up on that and actually gives a damn had have done, right? Which is probably go to him or call somebody, or you would have taken some type of action, right? If you had have picked up on it, do you think you could have made a difference?
No. because
And the reason I'm asking is because at that point, for him to say that sounds like his last reach out attempt. And we don't know if you were the last person he talked to and said something along those lines to, but you know, time frame and listening to the conversation, it could have been. You know what I'm saying? Especially the fact that he wrote you that letter and everything.
That's first and foremost, that's a good question, brother. I really appreciate you asking it. Thank you for your question. And I don't want the attention on me, so after this we can go to other stuff, but since you asked me that question, that is why during the last episode, I was not received in popular manner because what I was saying was so
Close to home.
counterintuitive to what you would think suicide prevention would be or a friend would be. I explained to you, brothers, and all of our viewers, when a person has their mind that they're going to do this, more often than not, you won't see it coming. This man just lost his job. Let me bring it on a lower level. This man just lost his job. You've only known him 4 months. And you're talking to him about the fact he lost his job, where you're going to get income from, you know, you all of that kind of stuff. And so you make a reach out to him, hey man, you're going to be all right, we're going to do this or whatever. And every day that you work with this individual, you had no signs or signals of depression. So when you're talking to someone like that, they say, man, I wish we had more time. At that time, you're thinking, damn, okay, we had a working relationship. So it's kind of like, man, look, we good. That's why I responded the way I did.
Right.
Our friendship goes beyond the job.
Right.
That's why during the last episode, I said it shocked people whether it's someone you know personally, or whether it's Robin Williams, or whether it's, you know, Heath Ledger, whatever, when they kill themselves intentionally, it's not the fact that they did it, it's the fact you never saw it coming. I'm not saying there aren't preventative measures to answer your question. What I'm saying is, when an individual is in that place of despair, and they are truly going in that direction, it's not that you can't do anything about it. It's the fact that they are so sincere in what they're doing and what they're saying. They have their bases covered. You won't see it coming. But in the depressive symptoms and stages prior to that, okay, that's where you can intervene. What got me was, man, I wish we had more time.
That's why I'm at that, and that's specifically why
And I'm
asking that
thinking,
question. Right.
brother, like this is beyond being professional.
Right.
In other words, we're not going to be seeing each other too much anymore.
You know what I mean? I'm
Right.
finna go get a job, whatever, or whatever case. I have to make some
Right.
moves. I'm in a very desperate situation or whatever, so we're probably not going to be talking to each other too much. That's where your mind is
Your
going to be.
mindset
That
was,
moment.
That's where it's
wasn't
gonna
even
be.
on the right level to
Right.
pick up what he was actually throwing out there.
If you picked up on what he was actually throwing out, which I would argue he wasn't.
Right.
If you pick up on what you think he's throwing out a lifeline for help. That's what he picked up on his friend.
Right.
But I knew him for so long. I think that makes a difference.
Brother, I feel you. You know, so you know what to listen for.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I've only known you 4 months.
Right.
But my impact on you in your life has been such that you thought about me past the here and now into the hereafter.
And left me.
Because you left me stuff and you wrote me a letter.
Right.
How and what could you do in them kind of situations? I would argue, if you're picking up on those types of cues where someone is suicidal and need help, that's the lifeline they're throwing out.
Right.
They're not going to do
Right.
it. Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying?
Y'all picking up on this. I
Like
won't do it.
I'm not trying to be aggressive, or I'm not trying to be, you know, attack you or nothing, brother. But what I'm telling you is, I don't want you on no level to think you knew him that well or you were that good of a listener. I'm telling you, He threw out signals that would get that reaction from you because they want help.
But see, when you say, and I'm not debating with
Sure,
you,
sure, no
you know
problem,
what I'm
no
saying?
problem.
I'm just, when I hear, and I, because I've already repeated it, so I know
Fair
exactly
enough.
what you mean. You
Fair
know?
enough.
And I understand why you heard, when he said to you, "I wish we had more time," what you heard was, he not gonna be working at this job no more. So we probably not gonna see each other, if we see each other at all. You know what I'm
Can't
saying?
blame him either.
I get that, right? But what I'm saying is, you know now that that's not what he meant.
Just like Robin Williams' friends.
Right?
did.
You hear what I'm saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So him saying that to me could have very well been his last, or one of his last reach outs, or one of his last attempts to say something to somebody. You know what I mean?
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But if you take that response and you take that attitude, you know what's going to happen? You're going to get so finely in tune with the details, you're going to ruin your relationships with the people that you have. Because now everything is becoming psychoanalytic. Now you're trying to pay attention that you don't miss anything. Because everything that I know, like this individual said that, oh man, I don't want that to get by me anymore. So now I'm gonna be more heightened and attuned to what they was really saying. When you start taking that attitude mentally towards your friends, towards your family, you know you're gonna start getting this stuff. As soon as I told y'all niggas I had my master's in psychology, then the first thing that y'all started doing was, hey man, he has a master's in psychology, you can talk to him. And then now people started thinking he's always analyzing what I'm saying.
Right.
Why? Because he has a degree in psychology. Why? Because psychology they literally break down everything that you're talking about. They analyze almost everything that you're talking about. So now you're not even free to be you and who you are. Because you're afraid you're under the microscope. So that's why if you look at most people that were like Dr. O, a psychiatrist, Sigmund Freud, a psychologist, or whatever, if you ask them, what do you do for a living? Man, I play the violin.
Right.
I'm a track runner. Mm-hmm. Why are they doing that? Because if I tell you what I do, you're going to automatically start thinking that you're thinking about what I'm doing. You're trying to analyze and break me down and understand me and that kind of stuff. I'm telling you, this is the truth.
Yeah.
Or even just like, oh really? Hey man, I need to ask you a question.
You know, that kind of stuff. So much that, right. The joke is, when someone knows you're in psychology and you tell them, they're either going to run to the far part of the room or they're going to be next to you all night. So if I have the attitude that, hey man, that person there said, I wish we had more time, I missed the signal, I missed the sign. I missed the signal and I missed the sign because suicide doesn't happen overnight. There are a list of behaviors, of ways of being prior to that actual action. If I had been watching, this is what he's really asking me. If I had been watching Roger, from the moment that we had that conversation up to the moment that we met, I should have saw the signs. But who wants to have a relationship like that? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Who wants to have a relationship with anyone?
Nobody.
Where you're under the gun, you're under the microscope.
Yeah, you would have.
Why would you do that?
You know, man, I've had, and you know, in our circle, we've had a lot of people in our circle who've dealt with that, right? Who've dealt with thinking about suicide, whether they've, I can't even think of anybody outside of that person who actually went that far, right? But I don't think that if when you're talking to a person, whether you know them for 3 months or you know them for 13 years, and they're going through something traumatic, and you're having a conversation with them, and you pick up on something, whether you're right or wrong, and you, out of genuine concern, just say, you know, it could be anything, but you could say something simple as, hey man, you know, when you said such and such, it just kind of sparked me. I just wanted to make sure, man, are you okay, dude? I don't think when you do that, that goes to that extreme that you just explained. You know what I'm saying? Where everybody, you know, is going to start thinking that every time they tell you something, you're going to start analyzing what they're saying. I think that you can be just matter of fact enough to come to somebody just like that, just out of genuine concern, and be like, yo man, what you just said, it just kind of, you know, it hit me the wrong way, man. I'm just checking with you, bro. You okay, man? I know you just, you know, you just lost such and such, or whatever the case is, and when you said that, it just kind of struck me odd. You sure you okay, man? You need somebody to talk to, bro? If not, cool, my bad. You know, but just as a friend, I was just concerned. I don't think that extreme that you explained is gonna always be the case. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, brother, but you're talking about depression. I'm talking about suicide.
No, I'm talking about suicide.
So if you're talking about suicide, one of the things, and I cannot emphasize this enough, one of the things that gets our attention is not so much the fact they killed themselves. That's not what gets us. What gets us is we miss the signs.
Mm-hmm.
When you miss the signs, what you're saying is, I wasn't paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
You weren't paying attention because no one wants a relationship with any other person where everything or anything that person may do may be considered something that deserves some type of immediate or extreme attention. We'd be like, hey man, Tawana was tripping. Oh, I was just being funny. Or it was just a joke.
Right.
But if you're talking about holding in context, hindsight being 2020, I've only known Roger 4 months. In my particular case, I can only speak for me. You're a suicide survivor as well, if I understand.
No, nobody actually ever committed suicide.
So
I've never lost anyone like that.
I apologize if I'm overstepping my boundaries. So, Lorenzo, that wasn't the case?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you're right. You're
Okay.
right. You're right.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
I wasn't
Thank you.
thinking about Lorenzo.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. During that relationship, if you look at how Lorenzo was behaving, you saw no pause or cause for alarm prior to you finding out what he did, and you reflected on it.
Well, and this is the reason why that didn't occur to me that that's who you were talking about.
No, it wasn't what I was talking about, but I was answering your question when you say, I never had that to happen to me, and I was saying, yes, you did.
Yeah. So to be, in all fairness, that, you know, with Lorenzo being my stepbrother, we hadn't spoken in, like, it had been a while. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So when he did that, there was no signs that I would have even been able to pick up on because we weren't there was nothing wrong between us, just life. You know what I'm saying? So there was no real communication.
It wasn't a close relationship.
Yeah, you know, I mean, our relationship was always going to be what it was because that was my stepbrother. But we just hadn't been in contact with each other over a significant period of time. So when I found out about it, you know, that's a different situation than just saying that, you know, in the context that we're talking, where I could have picked up on something from what you were asking. You understand what I'm saying?
I understand exactly what you're saying, brother. Absolutely. I understand.
So they
exactly
made
what
it
you're
a little different. That's why when you said it, I didn't even realize who you were talking about.
Whenever it's actually speaking to that point as well as my example.
Okay.
whenever someone takes their life, the first thing we do is we say to ourselves, what could I have done differently? That's what we do. Whether you saw them every day for 20 years or whether you haven't seen them in 20 years.
Why I didn't see it.
Why didn't I see it? And when you start looking at, and I'm going to be very frank with everyone in this room, when you start looking at why you didn't see it, and then you started paying attention to certain behaviors, the first thing you started doing was you started feeling guilty because it got by you.
Yeah.
So you start feeling like I could have done something, right?
Yeah.
If you started, I'm sorry, go ahead, brother.
No, I was just gonna say, like in my case, it depends on the situation, because I didn't feel like that because I had no contact with him to feel like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't feel like, why didn't I pick up on it? Because there was no way I could have picked up on it. It was as random as anything when I found out about it.
So you're the exception. If you knew someone for 20 years, day in and day out, and they did this, my point that I'm making is when you start feeling guilty, you're feeling guilty because you felt like you could have possibly made a difference had you been paying attention. Had you been paying attention and you're seeing these signs or these indicators or whatever you want to call it, they hadn't bathed in a month. They hadn't, you hadn't heard from them in 30 days. Whatever the case may be, they stopped eating, all of that kind of stuff. They lost interest in stuff they normally would love. You start feeling guilty because you feel like you weren't paying attention, and you feel like had you been paying attention, you could have made a difference or a change in that person's life.
Right.
That's one side of it.
Right.
I'm saying that because if you were paying attention to the point that this brother just said, if you had been paying attention to what you was picking up on, the type of engagement and friendship and relationship you had with that person would have taken a totally different dynamic. You would not be talking exactly, we're human, exactly, Dr. O.
She said we can't be on alert 24/7.
Exactly, she understands what I'm saying.
Right.
If you are having that level of engagement or that type of engagement with your friend can be a patient, no doubt about it. But don't make no mistake about it. If your friend is a patient and you're dealing with the illness that this patient has, you're not going to engage them the same way a friend would.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the point that I'm making.
You would distance yourself.
Well, that's one way.
Somewhat.
Maybe.
Some people.
You would distance yourself in terms of your level of engagement or the type of engagement.
Right.
And the crazy part about it, Brother Los, is when you do that, you know what they do? They pick up on it.
Right.
You see? So now,
You're gonna draw back.
exactly, you're going to draw back and you're going to start looking at things objectively.
Yes,
You're going to start looking at things third person point of view. You're going to start diagnosing and dissecting what certain things meant.
Right.
That's why I asked the question, who the hell is going to have a relationship with you like that?
I don't got time to think about all that shit too.
I'm sorry, brother. Who's going to develop a relationship with you like that? Mind you, let's repeat it again. I've only known him 4 months. And the reason that he's my friend, was because the way they just walk into any corporate environment, that's how they're looking at you. That's why they put you on 90 days probation. They studying you.
Right.
He killed himself 4 months afterwards. In a psych firm. Testing against that. He beat the test.
Wow.
You understand what I'm saying? And through all of that, you decided to still befriend me. Why? Because you're not looking at me like that. You're dealing with the human part of me. Does that make sense, brother?
Yeah.
So that's why I say, I'm not saying that this brother here was bad or good for whatever, what happened to him in his life and, he lost a loved one and all that. What I'm saying is, I could not have picked up on those words that he spoke to me any more than Robin Williams' children that has known him way longer than even his own wife.
Right. Did you think that was the question that I was asking you?
Explain the question, brother.
Because what I specifically said was, if you did pick up on it, do you think you could have made a difference?
I don't.
That's the question
I don't.
asked. That's
I
why
don't.
I was like,
I don't.
I wasn't really sure where you was going with it.
I don't.
That's not what I had asked you.
I don't. I don't think I could have made any difference.
Yeah.
Because the issue is, whatever your problems were when you committed suicide, they were not only before me, but they were bigger than me.
Right. Right.
At best, I may have bought you some time.
Right.
At best. But that's not what we think about when our friend kills themselves.
Right.
Our friend killed themselves.
Right.
That's what we're thinking about. And the moment you engage them in terms of, hey, I want to try to save you, you just lost your friend.
Right. Like, you nigga think I'm trying to kill
The
myself
people
now?
that, this is the point I was making to you, the people that are legitimately they have their minds made up to go in that direction,
Ain't no change.
ain't, you understand what I'm saying? You gonna get a call from the coroner.
They've already crossed the line.
If you heard anything that may have said, hey, that's a warning sign, oh my goodness, whatever, I didn't know this person ever, was capable of this or whatever, it's not that you were just that keen of a listener. You heard the SOS.
You heard what they wanted you to hear.
That's my whole point to this brother.
No. Now you're speaking to the question I was asking.
That's my whole point.
Yeah.
That's my whole point. That is not to say, and I hope everyone listening to us, I'm sorry we're going over. That is not to say.
We way over. But we
Damn.
keep talking.
Okay. That is not to say, because I really don't want to talk about this in a moment because it hurts so hard.
Say word.
Make your point, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah. That is not to say that if someone cries out to you in pain, not to answer. That is to say, if a person is truly suicidal, the first and immediate thing you need to understand, the pain they have is greater than any alternative you can present them.
Even themselves. It's greater than themselves. That's how bad it is.
Once we wrap our heads around that, then we will start saving lives. But if being comfortable in your mind state that something is wrong in life, and you have to look at it a different way, and that's going to save your life, if that makes sense to you, keep doing it. Just get ready to go to more funerals.
Right.
That's my point. I'm going to talk about this in a moment.
And with that, the number there, if anybody's watching this and you even are contemplating or ever thought about it, call that number. Go to the website. From this website that we're showing you, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. You can get to all the ones that I mentioned. Again, we'll put them in the the links in the description later. But yeah, reach out to someone. There's tons and tons and tons of people out there that can help you. I mean, really, 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 really help you. So if you're feeling that way, or you even know somebody that might, give them a call. They'll tell you how to deal with it.
Don't let it get to that point where you're too far gone. If you having those thoughts, get help. Find somebody you can talk to, whether it's a professional, a close family member, friend, whatever the case may be. But if you're starting to have those thoughts, then you need to seek help before you get to the point
These
of
people
no
is
return.
hope. These people is hope. That if that's what you need, these people can hopefully they can find it. But again, like the brother said, once you cross that line, there's no turning back. You're gone.
Yeah.
So hopefully, if you know you're about to cross it, call them. Maybe see what they can talk to you about. So yeah.
And if you think somebody, or you feel that you're picking up on something, that someone may be depressed or suicidal, don't do nothing. Don't just stand by and not do anything. Because one of the things that I read, and I said this on the last show, is one of the common myths about suicide is when you think that someone is in the mind state that they could be suicidal, not to say anything so you won't plant a seed. Say something. Say something.
With that,
I guess we can go ahead and call it a night.
yeah.
Unless anybody has anything else they want to say.
Well, make sure you share this video if you enjoyed it. And we need a lot of people to get in on this.
Most definitely. Please share this video.
Dr. O, man.
Yeah.
Dr.
Oh,
O.
and that,
yeah,
and the
Dr.
Stand
O
for the
watching.
Silent
Yes,
too.
Dr.
Go
O
to that.
watching.
That's about children being bullied
Yes.
that commit suicide.
Yes.
So check out standforthesilent.org. This one here, the National Prevention .org.
And thank you, Michelle, for giving us your
Absolutely.
time. We really
Yes.
appreciate you
Absolutely.
spending with us for such a
Yes.
long time. And you know,
Absolutely.
hopefully, you know, if you see her, you know, walking around the UK, show us some love. If we
Right.
got any fans over there in the UK.
Right.
I think Dr. O agreed to our suicide by cop episode.
Yes.
But we may have to change the date or what have we do it if it doesn't fit our schedule.
Okay.
Or also we may have to do like we did with Michelle. We may have to interview her and then
Right.
bring the interview onto the show
Do
or
that
what
too,
have you, you know, because she's a busy woman. Y'all, I can't speak enough words about Dr. O, man. She's a wonderful, beautiful, competent, loving psychiatrist. And she is, I would say it again, she's one of those people, she's so smart that you just don't really want to talk. You know what I mean? You feel like you're dumb. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know you've read a lot, but just the way they talk, man. Like, like, oh my goodness. So, like, I really hope we can get her on live, and not we get on one way or another. And thank you so much for supporting us, Dr. O. Thank you.
And listen, man, this is probably like our third or fourth show about this. So there's a lot of information that we've been giving out on this because it's very important, y'all. So like and share share all of those videos, man, because you never know whose life you can save. All right. So we're gonna go ahead and shut it down for the night. Again, thank y'all for being here. We do apologize for that little issue we were having with the video, but hopefully y'all could hear everything she was saying clear because it was very important. And I'm your boy Big Ruck.
Brother Los.
I'm Brother Ron, the number one. Let him run up a ball out of here.
With Ashy Toes.
Toe jam. Exactly.
And I'm Brother Jam.
Toe jam.
And our sister T up in the
Yeah, we got 2 on in here. Thanks for coming, T. Thanks for coming, T. Thanks for coming.
And we love y'all, man. We love y'all. And we are the Daily Smoke.
And we are
out.
Peace.
Peace.